The Alien franchise, known for its groundbreaking blend of sci-fi and horror, what about it? From the claustrophobic terror of the original to the explosive action of aliens, and from the dark twists of the sequels to the ambitious scope of the recent prequels, let's get into it! Please help your favorite average movie guy get to 1,000 subscribers by subscribing right now. Alien 1979. We begin with the film that started it all and descended into theaters not with a roar, but a hiss, quiet, cold and deliberate. Directed by Ridley Scott, this wasn't just science fiction, it was gothic horror in space. The year is 2122. Aboard the commercial towing vessel Nostromo, 7 blue-collar crew members are awakened early from hypersleep. Their new mission? Investigate a potential distress signal from a nearby moon, LV-426. What they discover is an ancient derelict ship and a field of strange, leathery eggs. When Officer Kane is attacked by a facehugger, the real horror begins. After seemingly recovering, Kane dies in one of cinema's most infamous scenes, the chestburster erupting violently from his body. It grows rapidly into a perfect predator, the xenomorph, stalking the crew one by one through the industrial corridors of the ship. The crew's fight for survival is made worse by corporate betrayal. The company they work for, Weyland-Yutani, secretly wants the creature preserved. And one by one, the alien picks them off. In the end, only Ripley survives. Sigourney Weaver's performance made Ripley an instant icon, not just as a female lead in a male-dominated genre, but as a fully realized survivor. Alien was a commercial triumph, grossing over $109 million worldwide. Critics praised its pacing, production design, and terrifying atmosphere. It was called an uncommonly skillful piece of filmmaking at the time. The film won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and its creature design became instantly legendary. It is generally regarded as easily the best, or maybe second best in the franchise, with a 8.5 on IMDb and a 4.3 on Letterboxd. It would be hard to disagree, but I feel like it isn't the best in the franchise, and some of the sequels, apart from Aliens, are also pretty close to it. The first half is slow, but once it gets going, it is truly great, not just all-time classic level for me. A 4 out of 5 for me. It was the birth of a new kind of science fiction, one that didn't look towards the stars with hope, but with unease.
Last survivor of the Nostromo. Signing off.
Aliens 1986. 7 years later, the nightmare returned, this time bigger, louder, and armed to the teeth. With Ridley Scott out, director James Cameron stepped in and delivered a bold reimagining, not a horror film, but a war film. Ripley awakens to a new world in 2179. It's been 57 years since the Nostromo incident. Her warnings about the xenomorph are dismissed. The moon where her crew encountered the alien, LV-426, had since been terraformed, colonized, and then suddenly gone silent. Accompanying a squad of colonial marines, Ripley returns to the moon to investigate. But this time the enemy isn't one alien, it's dozens, maybe hundreds, an entire hive. Ripley finds the only survivor, a young girl named Newt. The film's emotional core isn't just the gunfights or explosions, but in Ripley's determination to protect a child in a world that failed to protect hers. Then comes the Queen, the matriarch of the hive, towering, intelligent, and monstrous. In the climactic battle, Ripley versus Queen, Mother versus Mother, Aliens becomes not just a sequel, but a showdown of legacy and will. Aliens was a massive critical and commercial success. It earned over $130 million worldwide and was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, winning 2 for sound editing and visual effects. Critics praised its intensity, character development, and world building, calling it a powerful, visceral experience. Sigourney Weaver was even nominated for Best Actress, a rare feat for a genre film like this. Ripley had gone from survivor to soldier to now legend. It is generally easily regarded as the best or second best in the franchise, with a 8.4 on IMDb and a 4.1 on Letterboxd. However, to me it is the best in the franchise. It's a step up in many regards, a 4.5 out of 5 for me. James Cameron turned terror into action, and Ripley, now battle-scarred and unbreakable, cemented her place in cinematic history.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Alien 3, 1992. 6 years later, the franchise returned, and expectations for the third chapter were sky high. Directed by a then unknown David Fincher, it was a troubled production from the start. Multiple scripts, rewrites, studio interference, and a vision that clashed with Hollywood's expectations of a franchise blockbuster. Taking place right after Aliens, from the first scene, the film made a brutal statement. Newt, Hicks, and even Bishop, the survivors Ripley fought so hard to protect, were killed off screen. Ripley crash lands alone on Fiorina 161, a desolate prison planet inhabited by violent men. And she brings something with her. Without weapons, without backup, and surrounded by convicts who fear her as much as the alien, Ripley must once again survive. But this time survival isn't enough. Ripley discovers she's been impregnated by a queen embryo. Weyland-Yutani wants her alive to breed a new generation of weapons. Ripley then makes her choice, one final act of deviance, one last sacrifice. She chooses to die, not as a host, but as a human. Alien 3 was David Fincher's directorial debut, but the experience was a nightmare. He disowned the theatrical cut, calling it compromised and unfinished. Years later, the assembly cut, closer to his vision, revealed a film far more layered, meditative, and tragic than audiences originally saw. Critics were split, some praised its atmosphere and thematic weight, others called it a betrayal. Financially, it earned over $159 million worldwide, but lacked the impact of its predecessors. Over time, however, Alien 3 gained a cult following. It definitely isn't seen as the worst in the franchise, but it is down there, with a 6.4 on IMDb and a 2.8 on Letterboxd. However, to me, it is easily the worst I've seen in the franchise, a somewhat fun and stylistic fall from grace, which does a shameful disservice to what came before. A 2 out of 5 for me. If Alien was terror and Aliens was war, then Alien 3 was penance, not a crowd pleaser, not a blockbuster, but something bold, something fatal.
I wanna die!
We got a deal! Remember? It dies first, then you!
Alien Ressurection, 1997. 5 years later, Ripley had died, but the franchise wasn't ready to let her go. Part sequel, part reboot, and part resurrection in more ways than one. Directed by French filmmaker Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the film took the franchise in a strange new direction, darkly comic, visually surreal, and genetically twisted. 200 years after Ripley's death, in 2381, military scientists clone her, and with her, the alien queen embryo that was inside her. What they create isn't the same Ripley. She's faster, stronger, and not entirely human. This is Ripley 8, part woman, part xenomorph, and something entirely new. As expected, the military wants to weaponize the aliens, and as expected, things go wrong. A group of space mercenaries stumble into the chaos. The aliens escape containment, the station spirals into a biological disaster, and at the center of it all, Ripley, grappling with her identity, her past, and the monster she's become. Ripley faces the grotesque reality of science gone too far, including failed clones of herself, barely alive and begging for death. And then there's the newborn, a human-alien hybrid birthed from the cloned queen. Jeunet infused the film with his unique, almost grotesque visual style, part comic book, part fever dream. Gone was the sterile horror of the original, replaced by an aesthetic that was dark, wet, and deeply weird. Resurrection earned over $161 million worldwide, enough to keep the franchise alive, but it left fans divided. Critics praised Weaver's performance and the film's ambition, but criticized its inconsistent tone and over-the-top execution. It is generally seen as the worst in the main Alien franchise, with a 6.2 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd. However, for me, it is hard to agree with this sentiment. I felt it to be somewhat of a step up from Alien 3. It is incredibly dumb and stupid with a slow start, but just incredibly entertaining to watch. A 3 out of 5 for me. Strange, messy, unsettling, but perhaps that's the point. Resurrection didn't try to recreate the past, it cloned it and let it mutate.
I don't know. I'm a stranger here myself.
Alien vs Predator 2004 and AVP Requiem 2007. The mid-2000s saw a period where the franchise didn't know what to do with itself. But then it collided with another cinematic beast, the Predator. And so began a crossover event and prequel that is now retconned in a timeline, built not on lore or narrative depth, but on fan-fueled spectacle. In the first film, Alien vs Predator, a secret Weyland expedition uncovers an ancient pyramid buried beneath Antarctica. Inside, a ritualistic battleground designed by the Predators, who use xenomorphs as part of their warrior trials. What follows is part survival thriller, part monster brawl. Caught in the chaos is Lex Woods, who forms an unlikely alliance with a lone Predator warrior. Together, they take on a xenomorph hive and even face off against a newly revealed queen. Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, the film was a financial success, earning $177 million worldwide. Despite a PG-13 rating that disappointed longtime fans, critics were mixed, calling it visually entertaining but narratively hollow. It is generally seen as the second worst in the entire franchise, with a 5.7 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd. 3 years later, the second film, AVP Requiem, took things in a much grimmer direction, literally. Set in a small American town, the sequel brought the xenomorph threat to Earth's doorstep, but not just any xenomorph, a Predalien. Yes, you heard that right, the Predalien, a grotesque hybrid born from the union of two apex predators, begins slaughtering townspeople in secret. In response, a lone predator is dispatched to clean up the mess, but this time there are no corporations or soldiers, just ordinary people caught in the crossfire. Directed by the Strauss brothers, Requiem ramped up the gore, pushing for a hard R rating and emphasizing brutality over character. But poor lighting, muddled storytelling, and forgettable human characters left many fans frustrated. AVP Requiem earned $129 million at the global box office, enough to turn a profit, but not enough to justify continuing the crossover. It is generally seen as by far the worst of the entire franchise, with a 4.6 on IMDb and a 1.6 on Letterboxd. Together, the AVP films were popcorn sci-fi, built on nostalgia and spectacle. But they left the alien mythology in limbo. The Queen had been dethroned, Ripley was long gone, and the franchise needed a new direction, or perhaps an old one.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Prometheus 2012. After a long hiatus from the franchise, Ridley Scott returned with his prequel, not with facehuggers or pulse rifles, but with questions. Big ones. In the timeline, it is a prequel, as it takes place before any of the actual Alien films, but it isn't a direct one. It was something else, a philosophical sci-fi epic that dared to ask where the Terra really began. Set in 2093, the story follows the scientific vessel Prometheus, dispatched to a distant moon, LV-223, after archaeologists discover a pattern of ancient symbols across Earth pointing to the stars. Funded by Wayland Corporation, the crew's goal is to meet the engineers, godlike beings believed to have created humanity. What they find is not enlightenment but extinction. Instead of answers, they uncover a collapsed civilization, a deadly bioweapon, and a black fluid that transforms DNA. The gods didn't want to give humanity life, they wanted to take it back. At the film's center is David, a synthetic played with eerie subtlety by Michael Fassbender. Programmed to obey but yearning to create, David becomes both observer and manipulator. His quiet rebellion, his curiosity, unleashes chaos. And then there's Elizabeth Shaw, a woman of faith, facing a universe without answers. By the end, Shaw sets off to find the engineer's home world, seeking truth. David, just a head, goes with her. Behind them, something new is born, something not quite a xenomorph, but close. Prometheus offered body horror, cosmic dread, and ancient mythology, but it divided audiences. Fans expecting xenomorphs were frustrated by its ambiguity. Others admired its ambition and philosophical depth. Critics were split, but intrigued. Prometheus grossed over $400 million worldwide, becoming a box office success and the highest grossing film in the franchise. And while it didn't answer every question, it opened a door. It is generally seen as the best or second best in the franchise since Aliens, with a 7 on IMDb and a 3.3 on Letterboxd. However, I would not really agree with this sentiment. It was intriguing and tense, but very lackluster in the end. It goes nowhere and gives hardly any answers, a 3 out of 5 for me. As I said, the film did leave many questions unanswered, setting the stage for further exploration of its complex mythology.
Sometimes to create, one must first destroy.
Alien Covenant 2017. 5 years later, Ridley Scott returned once again to steer the franchise back towards its roots, merging Prometheus' philosophical ambition with the body horror and brutality of classic Alien. The result was a hybrid of ideas and entrails. Set a decade after Prometheus in 2104, the story follows the Covenant, a colony ship bound for a new world. But when the crew intercepts a mysterious transmission from a nearby planet, they divert course and step into a trap. The planet is beautiful, breathable, and deadly. A fungal infection begins turning crew members into biological incubators. As the infection spreads, the crew encounters the last thing they expected, David, the synthetic survivor of the Prometheus mission. David has changed, no longer just curious. Now he plays God. In the years since Prometheus, he has begun his own experiments trying to create something perfect, something terrifying. The xenomorph is no longer a mystery of the cosmos, it's David's masterpiece. David's twisted ideology clashes with Walter, his more obedient counterpart, both played brilliantly by Michael Fassbender again. While Covenant delivered gore, suspense, and iconic alien attacks, it also deepened the mythology, making the creature less ancient terror and more manufactured horror. Alien Covenant earned $240 million worldwide, a modest success. Critics praised Fassbender and the return to horror, but were split on the film's identity. Fans too were divided, some thrilled to see the xenomorph return, others mourned the loss of Prometheus' grander vision. It is generally held on a similar level to the last two Ripley sequels, with a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd. However, I feel this is really harsh. It does an excellent job at tying the whole franchise together and is also very enjoyable on its own. A 4 out of 5 for me. With the prequel saga paused and fans craving a return to form, the next chapter would go back to the time between Ripley's first terror and the greatest war.
You seek your creator. I am looking at mine.
Alien Romulus 2024. After years of sprawling lore and philosophical ambition, this film brought the franchise back to a single, sharp point: fear. Directed by Fede Alvarez, Romulus was a return to basics, a standalone story set between Alien and aliens in the early days of the xenomorph's spread. In 2142, orphan miner Rain Carradine and her adopted android brother Andy labor under the deadly conditions of Weyland-Yutani mining colony. She joins a group of friends on a dangerous mission to board a derelict Weyland-Yutani space station and steal cryosleep pods to flee to a better world. But they unwittingly awake frozen facehuggers, triggering lockdown protocols. As survivors scatter, grim revelations unfold. The station had been conducting genetic experiments with a fluid that rewrites DNA using facehugger biology. Kay, exposed to the fluid, is healed violently. Her pregnancy mutated into something monstrous, leading to the birth of the offspring, a grotesque xenomorph human hybrid styled after the engineers from Prometheus. Rain ejects the offspring into space just before the station explodes into planetary rings. Now Rain and Andy escape in cryosleep, leaving open the terrifying possibility that the nightmare may continue. Critically, Romulus was hailed as a return to the franchise's horror roots. It grossed approximately $350 million worldwide and garnered praise for its tactile production design, emotional clarity, and payoff with die-hard fans. Kaylee Spanie's performance stood out, but David Johnson's nuanced portrayal of Andy was especially great. It is now generally seen as the best or second best film in the franchise after Alien, with a 7.1 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd. This might be a hot take, but I feel that it might even be better than the first Alien. It might be a bit too familiar, but has a last act that firmly makes it its own thing. A 4 out of 5 for me. This was not a reset, it was a resurgence, and a sequel luckily is now already in development.
Rain, are you sure about this?
Only one way to find out.
Alien Earth 2025. Now we get to the newest project in the franchise, the first foray into television. For over 4 decades, the Alien saga kept its horror at arm's length, in space, on moons, inside research stations, or deep in corporate vaults. But now the terror finally crossed the last threshold, coming home. Created by Noah Hawley, it is shaping up to be one of the boldest reimaginings the series has seen. The story takes place in 2120, 2 years before the original Alien. But Earth isn't a haven, it's controlled by a tangled web of mega corporations, including the ever-present Weyland-Yutani and a powerful new rival, Prodigy Corporation. When a mysterious space vessel crash lands on Earth, the quiet tension of Earth's corporate order is shattered. The ship wasn't just carrying technology, it was carrying something else, something alive. At the heart of the series is Wendy, a synthetic, whose consciousness is based on a real human mind. She's more than an android, she's the first of her kind. She's accompanied by a group of tactical soldiers. The horror won't be confined to corridors or space shuttles this time. The show promises 5 new alien variants, blending classic designs with grotesque new evolutions. While previous entries in the franchise explored fear of the unknown, Alien Earth aims to explore the fear of the familiar. It could be a defining moment in the franchise. It might not just bring the xenomorph to Earth, it might bring the franchise back to life a little more. In space, no one can hear you scream, but on Earth, everyone will.
It's coming! Let me in!
And there you have it, the full history of the Alien franchise. From Ripley's adventures to the expanded stories in the modern prequels. Now let me ask you, are you excited for Alien Earth? And what is your favorite Alien project? Let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe for more videos like these. I have been Dean, the average movie guy on your screen. Big thanks for watching. See you next time. Roll the credits.